computer. I can forget about that now. And that recording will be on YouTube later. So Philip Burton, I was thrilled when Philip asked me to be his publisher. His poetry is exactly the sort of thing that Palewell Press exists to promote. A serious interest in the environment or in human rights or both. And if we get this right and we all share what we write and we share what we read, more and more people will come to believe the same things. And maybe we'll get to that tipping point and be in a better state than we would otherwise be. Philip was born in Dunfermline and raised in Ramsgate, to my surprise. His love of readings and performance developed through life as an English and drama teacher, a Lancashire head teacher in backup, he was just telling us, a folk singer, an amateur actor, and most importantly, a poetry practitioner. And he's done masses and masses of poetry days for schools and for adult learners, calling himself Pip the Poet. Nobody did that at my school, I can tell you. Despite suffering from dyslexia as a child, he went on to university and he got a commendation in the 2020 stanza competition for his poem on dyslexia. It's really important that we make sure that people who are not reading or writing for some reason get extra help, because it's such an important part of our world and such a way of feeling empowered. Philip's had more than 370 poems published in magazines, and his work has appeared in anthologies. And in 2019, he had 4 concurrent first prizes in national or international poetry competitions. I've told you he's passionate about the environment. GAIA Warnings, his 4th collection, looks at climate change, species extinction, and how we relate to nature. And the book has a beautiful cover, which is a painting by a lovely person called Lynn Bushell, as some of you may know if you've already got copies. And Lynn is allowing me to make posters as well, so they'll be on sale. His previous collections are The Raven's Diary, Couples, and His Usual Theft. Now, because he's been so successful, Philip has met and read alongside many famous poets: Adrian Mitchell, Gillian Clarke, Penelope Shuttle, Michael Schmidt, and Kai Miller. He does credit a lot of his development to 3 years in a U3A poetry appreciation group in Todmorden. Many of you may know of it. And he's a member of Clitheroe Writers Group, and I know some of you are here tonight, and the Ribble Valley stanza of the Poetry Society. For 6 years, he's judged the Burnley Writers' Circle annual competition, and he became its honorary president in 2019, not 1919, as I incorrectly said. He also gave workshops for the National Association of Writers in Education, and he's been one of their mentors. Now, we're going to begin with this beautiful piece of music recorded by Steph Portersmith. So bear with me while I share my screen. And then I'll start the music off.
Run, 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 said the automobile, and it ran. Run for your life, take to your heels. Foolish school of fish on wheels, GAIA. Turn away from your animal kind. Try to leave your body just to live in your mind. Leave your cold, cruel Mother Earth behind, GAIA. Someone's gotta stop us now. Save us from us, GAIA. No one's gonna stop us now.
Thank you very much for listening to that. Philip, did it work okay? You're on mute at the moment.
It worked for me, Camilla.
Brilliant. So hopefully it worked for all of the rest of you. We've had a few issues with screen sharing, mostly my technical innocence, shall we say. Brilliant. Okay, in that case, it gives me enormous pleasure to hand over to Philip, who will start by reading 4 poems.
I should say that, well, as Camilla says, I am dyslexic, as were W.B. Yeats and Benjamin Zephaniah, and indeed Albert Einstein. And at the age of 11, I could neither read nor write. The school subject which began to rescue me was chemistry. I could read chemical symbols, H and O make water. Thankfully, I didn't realize it got more complicated, such that, for instance, 3-methoxy-4-hydroxybenzaldehyde is vanilla essence. Also, my technical school produced lists of specialist words from woodwork lessons, engineering, and so on, words on which we were constantly spell tested. This is, in fact, is an excellent help for a dyslexic child. But simple chemistry taught me the basics of poetry. Take 2 words, put them together, and you've got something completely different. Blue plus grass equals a groovy kind of music, bluegrass. Gaia plus warnings equals the planet suddenly has a voice. The earth, our mother, can speak. As with you, I'm sure, I feel especially alive outdoors. As a child and teenager, I loved cycling English country lanes. As a student for 6 years, I worked on the beach. I was a labourer and then had a year hiking around Europe and the Middle East and helped to harvest crops and plant trees. You'll all have your favourite school memories. The school in which I taught first was a secondary modern in Manchester. The head teacher, bless him, had a strict rule. If the sun was shining, we all had to be outside, chairs, blackboards, the lot. Great exercise on showery days. We were all fit as fleas, and it suited me down to the ground. These days I work in my garden 1,000 feet up in the Pennines. Like me, you'll rejoice in the natural world and feel sorrow for its plight, and you'll hope for a sustainable future. My poems try to find this balance. Page 1, Gaia warnings. Don't be surprised you feel estranged. Listen to the loudening sob of creatures nestled in the fog. Learn this lesson, mark my words. Dismiss your missiles, children. Tip your plowshares into fields. Go back and take the path less traveled. Reconnect with Poems Daily by Charlotte Turner Smith, John Clare, Coleridge, and Joanna Bailey. Is the natural world today as rich? Human history, as we know, has been plagued by war. As Gaia says, dismiss your missiles, children. Page 6, range finding, after Robert Frost. 1. They unlimbered cold cannons, their talk festooned with procreation, God, shit, and swallowtail rags of ordnance jokes, eggshell thin. All day long, the quartermasters ticked buff boxes and men fell in to learn the range, the elevation that would wipe the tree line flat as the playing fields of Eton, the captain said. Then a pipkin of stew was gone round and rum for the lads to kill the din. The sparrows were the first to fall. Shock waves took them down the sky as if they'd not been there at all. 2. I am a white owl. Witness this. I revisited my young throughout, went about my fine business, till expelled from the hooded land by explosive coughs of gore and sap. Now I roost on a rookie's hand, who fired blood in short bursts, his limbs flapping along the margin as though to fill a few fat bells of uptrod flowers before the end. There's not blood enough within me for such noble gifts, minuends of less and lesser drops of red. Why do men do such harm and good, far from barn and potting shed? Did you know that in the First World War, the British Army fired something like 170 million high explosive shells? Many remain unexploded in the topsoil. Belgian farmers still come across them, often with fatal results. Page 8, Men in Black. He's felt the apologetic lurch with which a plough unearths a high explosive shell, but in a corner of a foreign field that is forever dangerous, Luke shrugs, finishes the furrow. He damps down the engine, walks the long stir of turned ground and bullish gulls. He pauses, studies, frowns, turns toward his rig, at peace among the milling birds. He pours coffee, unfolds breakfast on a gingham towel, crisp, dark bread, sweet tomato, and today's gift from the hive. His wide hands cradle a mudded mobile phone. He wipes it quiet, shields his eyes. A NATO plane glides between Armentières and the careless lidded honey of landscape, slowly finding its ancient level. Page 4 and 5, Europium. There is an element of surprise that in 1901 they chose europium to name a new metal. Not hard for us to see the parallel with Europe back then, hugely volatile, needing to cool, congeal. Had Europe simply Europeanized, become a single element at that time? Had its fragility been self-observed and the barrels of guns repurposed as magnificent city organ pipes? Had it furnished scientific minds with a vital compass of compassion, so when chancing on unstable atoms, instead of breeding cosmic mayhem, researchers would have reinterred them for fear of unleashing evils to come? But no, we are saddled with plutonium. 2. Old radioactive atoms turn leaden, as do spent powers like Britain. A world of exclusively inert nations might constitute a more peaceful place, but Plumbum does a rum thing, alas, oozing down the stained glass, a full inch every 1,000 years. Indeed, all history one day disappears. The UK, peering past its hospital mask, yearns for a long unfinished task to resurrect. And this last firework can, appearing to be dead, burn our hand.
Hi there. I'm going to be reading the next set of poems, and they take their inspiration from the saying that small is beautiful, particularly Ernst Schumacher's philosophy of enoughness, the way he based it on the strengths of village life, human needs and limitations, and a reasoned use of technology, low tech, I call it. I'm going to start by reading The Sand Garden. These are Philip's poems, but from the book. The Sand Garden. I unearthed an edge to the new ground, mineral with animal connections, a gravestone larger than death, a standing stone grown tired, sunk back to loamy bed, latent, duvet deep for me to find. But rather than disturb, I leave a space in the escalonia, welcome the sand as it idles through, put shallow things here, radishes, driftwood brushed by starlit oceans, shelves combed pale, peppery furrow, thin tellin, cockle, white tortoiseshell, insubstantial as the moon. And in the next poem, we're going to be thinking back to when Philip was a student and he worked on Broadstairs Beach as a beach comber and a deck chairperson and lifeguard for 6 years. As he described himself as a hippie, and I have to believe it, it sounds fantastic. I was in much the same mind at the time, but didn't have that opportunity. And I'm going to be reading the next poem is The Beach Coma. And it's dedicated to someone called Miss Tandy Richards. She had a way of living her life in the middle distance. Pockets as large as her blanket coat would harbor a cubit or two of sea blue anchor rope, evocative white driftwood of a less acidic sea, a deposit bottle bearing a note, time-honored additions to the sculpture of shells that she found as divine as ulvaweed with its truffle smell. Now her granddaughter chugs the Strand in a machine, a sand boney, harvesting marine debris, filling council wagons to overflowing, and landfill isn't free. Along the sound, the shallow bites, the towering duffel flaps of hungry coves, buttonhole shoals of baby liners, polymer pots and nano detritus, and guide them to rest in a swaying heap beyond the arms of the tide. I love that poem. And the last poem in this set is called The Slow Train. And it has a line in it twice where the word slow is repeated. And the second slow is the sort of berries, spelled S-L-O-E, that you can harvest on the common and turn into alcohol. Something I haven't done, but one of my friends did very effectively, and we all got seriously plastered. Slow train. Slow, slow train. Well named, pauses often nowhere near a station, often to let roads through, or cattle, or fox to safe haven, or give a lift to a rambler who looks a touch tired, just for conversation with one of the 5 guards, or vacationing signalmen who enjoy the train's pace, or visit the driver's daughter who ties her blouse on sticks to flag us down, or cool our feet in the river's murmuring tones, or write poems about slow liquor made with gin in a still on the slow, slow train. Back to you, Philip.
Thank you, Camilla. Lovely reading. 130 years ago, Joanna Baillie, the Romantic poet, wrote about a peaceful English village in her long poem, A Summer Day. I write this regarding what that village has become. Page 30, The Prize. Between the night and the village. Sodium glow creeps unwarranted along the breastworks of a ditch. A chaffinch nest, pierced, dislodged, lies on the desolate brim of the road, betrayed by the gross modern rage for chainsaw management of hedgerows to ease the Grand Guignol rampage of the car. The villagers arrive for Easter, swerve to avoid the tumulus nest. A polecat moon pours back the cloud's edge, looks in. One fledgling left on tiptoes, cries in silence, no replies. The cuckoo village quietens as it squats. Day by day, carefully sown moss, roots, grass unwind, buffeted by cars which shuttle past. A figure sweeps the parking lots. Today's the best kept village prize. A swan was electrocuted recently by overhead high voltage wires above a railway. Page 31, Swan Down. Fuldatal, Germany, December 2020. Overhead lines brought down a swan. Dawnlit pages flicked loose from a bleached folder posted through a letterbox, strewn. There had been two. The one spared, the bereaved, the outliving soul, undertook a signature plunge, an ungraced blur of fiercely knotted wedding dress down the aisle of sleepers. Though sad as chiseled salt, its majesty covered the white ballast and held hostage the ribs of the railway track. The trains caught the mood, cancelled themselves from miles away, sensed the ache. Grief was allowed the commuter too. Something was gone, more than mere timetable. The station clock was heard to tick. We are never far from wildlife, are we, in our cities? One of my daughters was at university in Cheltenham. Page 22, guest worker. The moon is amplified by sunflowers. Moon clouds waver above shadows. The earth's underarm is sweet. Showers all day have topped and tailed the meadows, framing the buttery stone of Cheltenham. Along the oaty mortar and honey walls, along rebel areas of wild marjoram, beyond the egg-white gates and lintels, strides the urban fox on his quiet quest. He yawns in contempt at my mock whistle, runs to pour the blood smells, is my guess, behind the co-op. Then a black bristle of garden sweeps him, inheres him. I turn my collar inside, like one wet ear. Some time ago, I read an article about the reintroduction of the barberry carpet moth and of barberry bushes, which are its main source of food. When I sent this poem to Fiona Haynes, she introduced me to Jack Plum, and he wrote a generous commendation on the back of the collection. Page 38, barberry. It certainly was there, but the barberry carpet moth hid from our eyes, immersed in curved triangulate wings, feather clouded in swirls of grey, traversed by a brush flick of twig and two dabbed depictions of leaves. Unfazed by us, it would be there, but we took its sturdy food plant away. Its rust fungus, we figured, blew onto the wheat. Berberis burned all day. Purple barberries roasted and steamed. Towpaths danced ghost grey with cuticle dust and bereft wings. When a new strain of resistant corn came online, the long guardian hedges were gone. Pragmatic gales wore the rootless loam to dust in the drought. Floods dissolved canal bank edges. Carpet moth, teach us a gentler walk. Thank you, Camilla.
That's right. Now it's my turn to read another 3 poems. And as a preface to this one, the next poem won the Sandwich Kent Poet of the Year prize in 2020. And Philip commented that building firms in Kent have been buying up the verges of country lanes for future urban development, whereas the French have a different approach to keeping the countryside green. And this poem is called Another Country. And it mentions If One Keeps on Walking by Soren Kierkegaard. Hike from a French village. Its name is crossed out on a sign where maisons end. No ribbon development, merci. No Dalesville fringe. La Bourgade is out of the frame in a few country strides. English hamlets drill outwards into the wild, an overspill that cakes the ancient fund of lanes, the ancient fund of country lanes with tight little builds. Undone green belt melts, trickles, cannot help but seal the walking routes. We saw with chains reconvene the wood as high green fences. Parking ramps cut short the ditches. We kill the thing admired. People will embrace clipped landscape, hungry for what was held to be a good picnic spot, now concealed by a Flemish wall. The road hiccups over a bridge, and there the many loam-deep scents of countryside. And it's all right, a bell peals. Now, as a child and in his youth, Philip used to cycle past, I think it was Ramsgate Airport, wasn't it?
Yes.
And there were curlews nesting there. I don't know if any of you know what curlews sound like. I'm not going to give an imitation. But along with curlews, he remembers seeing the last raven on, I think it was Broadstairs Beach, or Ramsgate Beach. And this poem is about skylarks, who also have a very definitive song. And I think it's sad the way we've lost so many of the sounds that we grew up with. Skylark, chante alouette. Swift as old age, skylark died. Skylark died, we are dumb. Skylark, Beethoven, high as hot helium. No better call on people's time to hear above all and all day long skylark song. When skylark lived, we were deaf. Skylark died, we are dumb. And there's one more poem in this set. Now, as you know, Philip used to be a head teacher, and he imagines a new child to the school asking the head teacher questions. The New Forest Child. Where is the forest where children play? The new child gasped. Is it out back? Do you grow moss, blueberry, bay? Are the buckets and spades for needles, cones, acorns, chips of bark? In the summer weeks of stag beetles, do kids stay and watch till dark? Why have you put your forest away? Please get it out, it's for children's play. Oh no, we are terribly modern. Hard standing and gravel yards are bare to ensure that each child stays within vision, is clean, and learns not to care. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilla. Like the Romantic poets, I know that being among trees, animals and flowers has a powerful physical, moral, educative effect on a person. So I was delighted when these benefits were scientifically verified last year in research by Aki Sinkonen in Finland. If we follow the science, every school should be provided with a small forested area for children's daily play. I dedicated this poem to Aki with his approval. Living with trees. It is with delight we found out today, and the proof cannot be stronger, that a little forest provided by school, out where the children daily play, ensures that those children are, as a rule, healthier and live longer. I wrote a poem recently I'd like to read to you. It's not in the collection, but I can forward you a copy on request. Jig of the World. If only the world were a jigsaw puzzle, which, shaken apart, would reassemble under a child's tender, dexterous hands. The forests cleared, clipped back in. Species ended, pressed home again. Perhaps we are children of Pangaea. Continental drift has stranded us here, plagued by extinctions we caused. We ache to be whole once more, haunted by gaps, searching the floor. Gaia has advice for the arable farmer. Modern farming has been slowly ruining the topsoil on which life depends. But I take comfort from the fact that many of our farmers are listening. Page 57, Rebel Ox. Athena, goddess of wisdom, sprang in body armor from the head of Zeus to teach mankind to penetrate the earth. Ever effective too are parallax marks in the field, right eye, far blackthorn, middle distant tufts of bent couch grass, bush, clump, eyeball make a straight line. Surely the plough will always furrow true. No protruding rock bothers the bullock, though one bronze dry sod of grass can lurch him sideways for a moment, his bulk stilled. But always the leather traces creak, the mouldboard hefts, the ploughshare bites, and off we set again to the lone tree, the rippling turn, the elongated return slog through subsoil, peat, elastic turf, and rain. Yet now he's bolted off, burst a blane across the paddock, ripped the access road, unseated rows of spring cabbages, and let his heaving flank collapse the piggery. Perhaps he'll launch back across wild ages to where land survives unscratched. Late Autumn Whispers, page 58. The plough has turned the life within the soil over to destruction. The delicate webs are snapped by the sun, tangled by winds, even before we can they exist, name them, or know their purpose. The fox flares her hungry nose, a speck of red in the far field, a tired maple, oceous autumn, the bilberry mist has rained its seed, the woods blaze from shadow, though the funeral pyre's gone, the fox trails colden, stifled in lingering smoke, the snow is slow to come, a shallow breeze, partly from the north, musses its paws among dead leaves, everything just exactly so, meagre cornmeal in the byre, the harvester greased and under wraps, the dead quiet. The lonely cartwheel spins the combing flakes to brush its lean spokes. Leather straps whip the alder pegs on the flapping stable door. The furrows narrow to a dotted line. The tired vixen screams and goes to earth. The farm lies open as a night before a war. I come to you, my love, to cover you, a whisper made of silence in the coppice, the only ever promise made by new snow. The grudge deep ditch fills, is forgotten. Next year, this farmer will scrap his tractor, give his heart and hand to the no-till approach. Fewer weeds will blight the harvest, and the wheat will ripen quicker, stronger.
Thank you very, very much, Philip. That's fantastic.
I just say about Jack Plum, because
yeah, tell them about Jack.
Yeah, Back from the Brink. That's the organisation he works for, one of them. He says that the arts provide an access point to nature's plight. I say, let us be the new romantics, and like the romantic poets of old, respond responsibly and passionately to our needy planet. In our day, Simon Armitage, the poet laureate, has given his entire honorarium to fund climate change poetry. And there's David Attenborough, brilliantly responsible and passionate and utterly persuasive. I've listened with delight to William Michael Neary, a local poet of the Forest of Bowland, who works in the fields without need of notes, speaks out, performing his poems to passers-by, poems continually polished to perfection by his active mind and awareness of nature. And there's Jack Plum, heroically bringing back wildlife from the edge of extinction, and Bob Flowerdew, who's won so many over to sustainable gardening, and Monty Don, of course. During the pandemic, many householders are lifting paving stones in their front gardens to grow flowers. In Back from the Brink, Jack Plum tells us we have a single generation to save life on Earth. And at the end of Gaia Warnings, he asks for our help, working side by side with the Back from the Brink team in their great mission to preserve our threatened wildlife. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you, Philip. That was fantastic. Now, I would really love it if you could all unmute yourselves so we can clap. So I only hope the technology works. Yep, some of it looks like it's working. Fantastic. Let's go to a slightly different view.
Great, Philip. Thank you.
Marvelous. Okay, if you're all unmuted, let's have a good old clap. Wonderful poetry. Now, if anybody would like to ask a question, they can put up their hand and then I will let them speak. Don't worry if you haven't got a question. I think we've heard a great deal of very interesting thoughts this evening. But if there's anyone who wants to speak, please feel free.
Would you want to say hello?
Hello there, yes.
That's Joss here. Well, I'm absolutely bowled over with the evening, and I just feel very emotional, really. I just love all the environmental points that have been raised, and I just salute Philip and you, the publisher, for publishing this terrific collection.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question myself. Philip, when do you actually write? Because I know that you have a busy life. Do you find you write at night or when you're out for a walk or what?
It sounds pretty crazy to say this, but I write when I'm in pain. I don't just be pain at the state of the planet. I started writing 20 years ago as a therapy, because I found that when I was writing poetry, I wasn't in pain. I was lost in a little world, like in being inside a little jewel, and I just wanted to be there as much as I could when I was in pain, and that's what I've done. In the first 5 years, I was in a lot of pain because I wrote a poem a day for 5 years.
That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, I did, and not all bad. And I used to write 5 children's poems in a day.
Gosh.
Somebody pointed out that I could polish them, and so yes, one thing I was prolific, and I've written more than 4,000 poems.
Oh,
how do you keep track of them all? Do you have lots and lots of books or folders or what?
Well, I have one folder, and I number them all, and I also classify them, because I write very different poems for different purposes. I'm a performance poet as well as a poet for children, a lyrical poet, and I have a huge range of subjects that I write to as well, including religious subjects. So, yes, that's me, I'm afraid. That's what I do.
Wow. Right. Are there any other questions that people would like to ask or points they'd like to put in? You'll find a link in the chat, which will enable you to see what the books, how you can actually buy the books if you want to. If you buy the book this week and between now and midday Monday, you'll get it at a discount, 20% discount. And I've put a link for that on my website. And it's and if you buy it after that, you'll be paying the normal price. But anyway, go to palewellpress.co.uk, and if you look under events, you'll find the book at a discount. And if you look on the main page, you'll see the copy and click on it, and that will take you to the normal price. But I'd like to thank everyone very, very much for attending. And I hope that when we next see each other, it will be face to face, because I've promised all my poets who've been published this year that we will try and get together somewhere and have a jamboree and a ceilidh and all the other good things that you can have. But until then, stay safe, everybody. And thank you very much for coming. Philip, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thanks, Philip.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Jamila.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That's it, is it? Oh, that was very good, wasn't it?
Hello, Jane. Oh, she's gone. Haven't seen Jane for ages.
And I have to go, Phil, but I'll give you a quick
Oh,
wave.
thank you. That's my sister, Wendy.
Oh, hi, Wendy. Yeah, I saw that you got one.
Yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. Okay, Philip, I'm going to close it now.
Yeah.
Thank you
Okay
very
then.
much for this
Brilliant.
evening. It's been
Well
marvelous.
done.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.